Hi, everyone. I am Violette Ayala, the founder of FemCity, and I am joined today by Julia May Hunt. She is one of our FemCity global members. She's also a social media branding photographer with a side of woo. And today we're going to talk about collaborations and forming partnerships. The reason why we're covering this this talk today, is because we had so many members request a class on this topic. And we know so many of you are starting to launch collaborations and partnerships. It's a great way to expand your business and grow your reach as well. So I've asked Julia to join me today to give me her experience, her advice to those that are looking at doing the same. So Julia May, I'm so glad that you're joining me today. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for having me.
All right, so let's go ahead and dive in. So for those that are looking at forming a partnership or collaboration with projects or multiple projects, I know for FemCity, we form collaborations with lots of other women organizations as well. And so this is, I feel, a really great way to grow your brand, your business, your reach, your impact as well. What are some of the tips that you can share with us today, Julia May, on ways that we can create successful um, partnerships?
Well, the first tip I have is to make sure you're building a relationship. And that happens over time, but start off with just a coffee chat. Just get to know each other, just have fun and see what each other's personality is like. And then after that, make sure you investigate and vet the person. Even if you've got some really great ideas and you feel like you really jammed on it, spend some time getting to know them, check out their social media. And you really want to make sure that your core values are in alignment with each other before you start moving forward on projects, and make sure your brands are in alignment with each other. Sometimes I've had some people that as a person I jive with really well, but then when I take a look at their brand, we don't quite see eye to eye. And so maybe they'd be okay for some small projects, but not a big project.
Yeah.
And then I always say, make sure you're starting with some smaller collaborations, because those are fun and they're easy. And you start getting to know each other and build that relationship even more. And then sometimes even purchase their services. And part of this is to find out if you're compatible with your work habits with each other. Because I've definitely had some times where maybe my work ethic and my work habits and the way I work is not compatible with someone else.
Yeah.
So you really want to make sure you know about that before you get into a collaboration, especially a big one.
Right.
And then my second tip is about communication and meetings. And this is so boring, but it's so important to be communicating, over communicating. Start with brainstorming. Make sure you're taking lots of notes and recording it if it's online. Then have development meetings. And in that, not only are you developing your ideas, but you're also defining the roles that you're going to play. And then planning meetings start happening where you're actually planning and things are coming to fruition. But during those planning meetings, also be sure you're clear on assigning the tasks, so everybody knows who's doing what. And ask questions, get clarification even outside of the meeting. So just make sure you're always communicating and express your concerns. So that's a big one. Sometimes you feel like you should hold back on those, but they can become bigger problems down the road. Yeah. And then make sure you're celebrating your wins as you go. So that's another big thing that I think it's fun to do the planning and throwing around the ideas and the brainstorming, but then as it starts happening, you start getting nervous. And so it's always good to I plan in celebrations just to make sure we keep doing that.
I love that.
And then my third tip.
Well, I was going to pause really quick because you said third tip, but you've given like 10, which is amazing.
Yes.
So many. So I just want to kind of recap and highlight what you shared already, because they're so important. So the first one is, you said to go ahead and establish that relationship. I think that's a really critical piece. I know that it sounds like it should be an elementary kind of practical tip, but the reality is I know so many that just like jump forward. I love that you mentioned, creating that relationship and developing that relationship. I know for ourselves, when we start collaborations with other women organizations, it's generally like 2 to 3 meetings. We had one
Mhm.
yesterday and they were like, "Oh, is it okay if we take time to noodle?" And we were like, "Yeah, it's sure. Like there's no pressure. Like just take the time. Like you want to make sure it feels really right." I love that you shared that the person. I think that's another one that's really often missed because what you see perhaps at a FemCity event or what you see when you're, just kind of like meeting someone in social media, you don't know beyond that. And so vetting that person, because the reality is that when you do form those partnerships and those collaborations, it reflects on your brand as well. And you definitely don't want to be in a situation where you've partnered up with someone that their core values are different than yours. That could really harm your brand. So I think that's a brilliant tip to that you shared that I wanted to highlight again. And then I love that you shared to start small, because I think often we feel like we have to just like dive in and
Yeah.
go big. And I love that you said just start small, because then that's the test. Like that's the place where you're going to get to know, to see like, you know what, maybe their work habits are different. Maybe their ethics are a little bit different as well. And so that gives you the opportunity to bow out gracefully before things get really kind of too big. And then I love, okay, those were a lot of points that you shared, Julia. I love that you were like, that's one. It was like,
That's one.
it was like 10. So I also love that you shared to, in essence, confirm to reconfirm to confirm again. So you're going to meet, often, ongoing. And I also love that you mentioned if there is a snafu, if there is something that's kind of like, is to address it when it happens versus waiting, because I often find sometimes people don't understand where they're disappointing you or coming short, or perhaps there's like a miscommunication. It's not so much to say that the other person's failing. It should be
Uh-huh.
like a miscommunication that if you address at the beginning, I think it's lighter versus waiting until like 2 years down the road to be like, and then you know what, in February of 2020, remember when you did this? Like, just addressing and saying, hey, you know what, this just happened. And I'm sure it was, a miscommunication, but here's the way I interpreted it, or here's the way I see it. So just addressing it like that. I think that those tips were amazing. So I'm going to pass it back to you for tip number 3, which is probably tip number 30, because everything you shared is great.
Well, and it did make me think that I did forget a couple of stories. While as I was listing off all of those, one time early in my business, I had quit my job, but I was in the portfolio building stages, and one of my portfolio clients had said, "Hey, will you come speak for a group about personal branding?" And so I knew someone that did personal brand, like social media management.
Yep.
Um, and we did a collaboration together, but we had a great time talking. But when it came time to put the presentation together, how she did personal branding was very different from how I did personal branding. And so we got through the presentation, but it was definitely a big compromise that neither one of us wanted to make, because we definitely had different ideas on it. And there was some big miscommunication in there about what the expectations were. So that's how I learned a lot of those lessons that I just shared. And then just recently, a fellow femme and I, Celeste Rose, we put on a little one-day women's retreat, big collaboration, and we were invited to go on local news, ABC channel. And, yes, it was great, but Celeste, the time that they asked us to go on, Celeste was actually on vacation. And both of us tried to be okay. I tried to be okay with me doing it by myself, and she tried to be okay with me doing it. But really, we were both feeling icky about not being together, because it was a definite, 50-50 partnership collaboration. And we held on to it and held on to it. And both of us just realized, let's, and then finally I said, well, I guess all we can ask. And it was no big deal.
Right.
We were able to move it to when she got back from vacation and
Love that.
did that part. But that's definitely the part of you've got to be honest and be ready to have some of those what you think are going to be hard conversations. But it ended up being so easy, and it was an easy solution. But that can also become something that then later on, like you just said, down the road,
Yeah.
can build up to a problem later in the relationship.
Yeah. You got some love that came through, by the
So,
way.
um,
Got some love. So Julie Allison, our FemCity, Hartford, Connecticut president and global member. I know you know her. This is great info. The planning and logistics are so important and not the first thing that comes to mind. However, it should be. And then we have Meg, our FemCity Sarasota president. She's a global member. Great advice. Thank you. She's chiming in from LinkedIn. And then we have someone from Facebook. Thanks so much. And then we have Delilah, our FemCity Brownsville president. From South Texas. Great conversation. So lots of love,
wow.
Julia. Yeah. So, all right. So
Yes.
go ahead. I know you have more.
Okay. So should I say my third
You're
topic of
sure.
tips? Okay. So this one is organization and legal, and some of this is still communication, because communication is so important. So just making sure that you're recording your online meetings and taking good notes, and make sure you're also summarizing those meetings and delivering them via email. Usually there's one person that's a little more organized and into doing things like this than maybe the other one. So just make sure that it's getting communicated. A fictional idea that just came to my head about this is, it's kind of like, and you were actually mentioning this a little bit just now too, is the miscommunication that happens. So I guess we're still talking about communication, even though we moved on to the organization and legal parts. But that's just where things can get sticky. Yeah. But I was thinking, let's say you have a meeting together and you're talking about helping homeless youth, and you both come out of the meeting. One person is thinking, oh, we're planning a gala to raise money for homeless youth. And another person is thinking, oh, we're having a party for the homeless youth. So those are two very different things. And I have seen some collaborations where the two people come out of a meeting, the same meeting, and have some very different ideas about what is going to happen. And so that's where, that communication and having the summary and then reading all of that and making sure that you know exactly what's happening is very important. And then make sure that you're getting important dates on the calendar, and make sure those are also getting shared with your partners and they're accepting the invites, and you just know that everybody is on board with what's happening when. And then talk money. Sometimes this seems like a really uncomfortable conversation, but you've got to be honest about who's taking payment, how you're going to get paid. I've even done maybe I'll do an Excel spreadsheet and share it on Google Drive or something, so that we can both be working on, keeping track of where the money's going and expenses. And there's always some surprises. So make sure I didn't even put anything in about that, but there's some surprises sometimes with the money part. So if you are doing a paid collaboration together, make sure you've got some padding in there for extra fees or something that you're not expecting. And then just communicating like crazy about, the money side too. And then once you think you've got everything all nailed down, then drawing up an agreement or even a contract is also a really great way to make sure everybody is literally on the same page. And then you can consult a lawyer for that. But definitely, if you're going to move forward with where am I at here? Make sure if you're going to move forward, like with an actual legal business partnership, you definitely want to have a lawyer involved in that, because I know there's a lot of ways to do a DIY with those partnerships, but it's best to just really bite the bullet and get a lawyer involved so that you can have all that done properly.
I agree completely. So someone asked from LinkedIn, I missed the first tips. Will there be a recap? Yeah. So we'll go ahead and we're going to add this to Instagram as well over, so our FemCity account over on Instagram, and we'll go ahead and add it to the library, and it'll be emailed out next Monday as well. So for those that missed not only the first tips, but like the first 20 tips that Julia may share, she shares so many. So Any final advice that you have? I mean, you've shared so much, and these are great tips. We've done this before. We did this class a couple of years ago. Julia May and I were talking about this in the green room, and the truth is that um, it's always great to hear it from somebody else. But I also feel like this is more extensive. I think that this has more details in it, specifically like reconfirming to reconfirm all the little details, starting small, and then of course getting everything in writing. So if it's more of like a paid collaboration, or if it's something like a true partnership where like there's an LLC involved, or that, definitely reach out to an attorney to draft that up so that you are protected and also the other person's protected as well. It protects everybody.
Mm-hmm.
That, everything's it's not to say like, you hiring an attorney to do it is like, cause you expect to be cheated. It's just, it's always great so that everyone's like, here's where everything's at. And you can refer back to that as well as a guide.
Right. So I guess my final advice is just to have fun.
Yeah.
That is actually how I've been able to build my business, is because I felt like when I got done running a restaurant, it's time to now run my business, and I don't have connections. I have a few, but I don't have enough connections to keep my business going. So collaborating with other businesses has been just really great, because you get exposure to other their followers or their clients, and then there's also, you get to split the work too. So especially if you are going to do a bigger collaboration, now you got a team. You're a team and you're working on something, so it's not quite so daunting as it is if you're trying to do something all on your own.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent, Julia May. This was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of your tips and your advice. For those that want to stay connected to you and learn more about the work you're doing in this world, what is the best way?
Oh, just follow me on Instagram, Julia May Hunt. That's the best way.
Yeah, I follow her and she's got great videos. You're definitely one of my favorite people to follow on Instagram. So I love all your tips. And congratulations on that great collaboration with Celeste. That was really great to see as well.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. We hope that these tips helped you. Let us know. Keep us in the loop. If you are taking on collaborations or you're inspired by this, just tag us and we'll give some extra love over on social media as well. Mwah. Thank you, Julia May.
Bye.
Bye.